World Cup and politics, can they ever be separated? As the greatest show on earth kicks off, we look at where the football ends and the international diplomacy begins. I'm Eddie Taylor, today I'm joined by Bernd de Boosman, and you're watching Inside AB. So Bernd, politics and the World Cup, they've been around together for a while, haven't they?
They have. I think, it's one of the most watched sporting events in the world. So even if you go back to the 1930s, the first few World Cups, it started. But there's so many examples. My personal favorite is in 1982, the UK considered not sending England and Scotland and Northern Ireland to the World Cup because of the Falklands. They did, but 4 years later, Argentina famously knocked England out of the tournament in Mexico, and Diego Maradona said it was revenge for occupying the Falklands
and winning. The military defeat. It was seen as revenge for that, which of course we all remember.
Yeah, but there's more recent examples. In '98, the U.S. playing Iran. Every time the U.S. plays Mexico, for example, there's no separating the issues they have.
One of the great World Cup moments was when there was nearly a diplomatic incident that was caused by the World Cup, of course, when Kuwait and France had a very controversial game and Prince Fahd stormed the pitch and demanded that the game was replayed. And it's interesting how sport can actually create diplomatic incidents. And
I think another good example is there was a war between Honduras and El Salvador started by a World Cup qualifier. It lasted 100 hours.
Well, let's hope it doesn't quite get that bad in this World Cup. But why is this one particularly controversial, you think?
Well, I think it's just kind of at a time in which Russia's role in the world is really hotly debated. It's become a superpower again, and some people think that this is their moment, their kind of like coming out moment. At the same time, it's hard to separate what happens in Russia at the World Cup. People are concerned about the role Russia plays in Syria, about things that Russia may or may not have done to dissidents in the UK, the US elections, the Ukraine. I mean, the list goes on. So I think for Russia in particular, it's kind of, it stirs up passions right now.
Do you think this is an opportunity actually for Russia to present a different side to itself with this backdrop of diplomatic tensions growing?
I think so. It's soft diplomacy, isn't it? So they want to kind of show that they're open to the world in a way that they weren't before, and that the Soviet Union definitely wasn't as open to the world as Russia is now. But I guess we just have to see how it plays out.
I mean, unlike Moscow in '80 with the Olympics, there are no boycotts this time, which is great. So everybody is taking part, despite threats of there being boycotts before the tournament.
There was quite a few threats. In the UK and in Germany, a lot of politicians wanted to boycott the World Cup because of the shoot down of the Malaysian Airlines plane over Ukraine in 2014. So it's one of those things.
But the politics has already begun, of course. Before a ball was kicked, we'd started to see international relations come to the fore in a couple of interesting areas.
Yeah, there's been quite a bit already. The Egyptian FA was criticized by a lot of people for housing their training camp in Grozny. Of course, Ramzan Kadyrov, the leader in Chechnya, is a controversial figure in his own right. Nike pulled out their boots. They're no longer supplying boots to the Iranian team because of US sanctions. I think that's a great example of politics directly impacting what's happening on the pitch. As far as I know, they still haven't found a replacement supplier for their boots.
Yeah, and no sooner has this World Cup kicked off than we're talking about the World Cup in 2026, and politics is again to the fore in that selection process.
Yeah, but I think it's it could be seen as a different side of the coin. The US, Mexico, and Canada at the moment don't get along in terms of politics. Donald Trump and Justin Trudeau have had their issues at the G7 recently. In Mexico, Donald Trump is, I think it's fair to say, probably the most widely reviled figure. But all that's being put aside for the World Cup. But at the same time, of course, you can see different fault lines, who voted for who between the group bid and Morocco, especially in this region. You can kind of tell who wants who to succeed in terms of football. Right?
Yeah, so that's another 8 years of politics to look forward to, all centered around the World Cup.
Of course, yeah.
So we'll see how this World Cup plays out. There's always more than just football taking place in any World Cup or any big sporting event. And we'll all be watching those events with interest. Thank you very much for watching Inside AB. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and leave some nice comments underneath our videos. Thank you very much.